This is episode 18 of the Latter-day Saint Geeks podcast. I'm Spencer, and in this episode, Kenton and I talk about the upcoming Harry Potter series on Max, what we hope will be included, and what we hope won't be left out. Welcome to another episode of the Latter-day Saint Geeks podcast. I'm Spencer, and I'm joined with Kenton for not our first recorded episode, but our first released episode together, because we've got a Bluey episode coming out next month for Father's Day that we recorded like over a month ago. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kenton. I'm, what do I say here?
Been on the team for a couple years now, I think.
That's true. I just don't write enough.
Um, you're just overworked and under-hobbied.
Yeah, that is true. That makes it harder.
Well, since we're gonna talk about Harry Potter in this episode, we could also include your Hogwarts house.
Well, I once took the test not very seriously, but I was placed in Hufflepuff.
Yay, Hufflepuff!
It's a good one. Cedric was in Hufflepuff.
Newt Scamander was a Hufflepuff.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I.
Ravenclaw is much more underrepresented now.
It's true. It's true. Like, other than Luna, there's not a lot of major Ravenclaws. They're all pretty secondary, but
Overlooked.
maybe. But yeah, I also a Hufflepuff, and if you ever get the chance, which you could probably rent it on iTunes or whatever, but there's a play called Puffs, and it's about the Hufflepuffs of Harry Potter's year. And I will always, it's not my recommendation for this week, although it could be, but it's worth a watch for any Harry Potter fan. So there's your homework this summer is to rent Puffs and watch it.
Sounds like a plan.
It's lovely. But actual recommendations for this episode, I've been watching Digimon Adventure Try. And I know you and I have talked about Digimon in the past, but I don't know that we've that you've watched the Try movies. Take place a couple years after season two. Does that ring a bell?
Hmm. I think I've seen a little bit of Try, but I'm not that sure.
I guess that's your other homework for this summer before school starts up again, you being a perpetual student.
Yeah, I think I've seen snippets of it, but I don't think I've really seen that much.
I believe it's a free for streaming on Plex and Tubi, and I think somewhere else as well, but I'm currently watching it on Tubi. I have the digital copies in my iTunes library, but I can't stream them onto my TV, so I've just been watching them on Tubi.
I'll have to give it a view.
And then what's your recommendation for this episode?
Well, as soon as I'm done writing down where I can watch it in a place that I'll remember later. Um,
Writing down all the
let's
homework I've
see.
already given
I'm
you.
thinking, well, what's the point of homework if you're just going to forget it, right? Um, for me, we've been watching Psych a lot lately. Right now we're on season 5. Those who aren't familiar, Psych started in 2005. I think there's either 8 or 10 seasons.
Oh wow, I didn't realize it went that
let
long.
me double check. It has 8 seasons, yeah. And it's about this. This isn't a spoiler though. This is about this guy who's
Now this is the
a
whole premise of
fake
the show.
psychic detective. He just has an gift, extremely gifted ability to observe things, like hyper observe, and he uses that to his advantage to be able to be employed as a psychic detective consultant, partially because he just doesn't have the discipline to be an actual detective. He's the kind of person who's a man child, very, very humorous, makes jokes all the time, hardly ever serious, but it's actually a very excellent series. It has a lot of homages to different film works of art, whether that be Alfred Hitchcock or uh, we just watched this one last night, the Twin Peaks homage, um, set in a town called Twin Spires. Very, very humorous. All of it's set in Santa Barbara in California, so it's it's always great when, you know, small places end up being, home to as many creative murders as you could possibly imagine. Kind of like Murder, She Wrote, this little tiny town in Maine suddenly has like 20 murders in a few years, kind of crazy. But
Just a little
anyway,
bit. Yeah.
definitely recommended as a murder mystery kind of with a comedic spin.
I swear he's almost like a comedic Sherlock Holmes, from what I recall.
Yeah, that's a fairly accurate
A
description.
little
He has a
oversimplified,
sidekick.
but not by too much from what I remember. But I mostly just remember my freshman roommates at BYU watching it. So I only got bits and pieces.
That's all right. Back in the time.
What's it streaming on
So
right now?
you can watch it for free on Amazon Prime.
If you have Amazon Prime.
I forget where else it's available.
I'll do some research and put it in the show notes.
So far, it says you can also watch it on Peacock.
The Peacock Free or Peacock Premium? We'll have to find out.
Hmm, looks like it's just normal Peacock.
There you go. Well, switching gears from psychic or not psychic detectives to wizards and witches, we were going to talk about today the Harry Potter series that's um, projected to release in 2026 on Max, which I still have a hard time calling it Max, even instead of HBO Max. It's for whatever reason it doesn't roll off my tongue very well. Um, but it's from what I understand, it's it's projected to release in 2026. So we've got a couple of years still. Not a lot's known about it, except that it's supposed to be a retelling of the books, spread out with one season per book. So I imagine similar to Percy Jackson, where they did the first book in the first season, and my only thing is the depending on well, the lengths of the books vary greatly from the beginning of the series to the end of the series. So I almost feel like the second half of the series would have to have like extended seasons or I don't know. It'll be interesting. But for today, I had asked you like what stuff from the books and from the movies you hope that we hope um gets included more than it was in the movies, or things that were included in the movies that we hope they keep, or stuff that was left out of the movies that we hope that they include in this series. So we both picked 3 points, and I think just go point by point and trade off, discuss. My first point is I want more house elves. Like that was a big part of Goblet of Fire. Not the most important part, but it was a big part. Reuniting with Dobby. So I especially want Dobby so that when in Deathly Hollows he dies again, that it's more meaningful. Um, like we had a recent guest post, um, a creature feature about Dobby, and if I recall correctly, Russell, who did the post for us, was hadn't read the books and was like, wait, why is Dobby so important? Wait, he's dead? So I want more emotional investment in Dobby. And I want Winky and I want Creature and I want to know why this matters. Also, the House Elves in the Battle of Hogwarts was really funny in the book, honestly. And because they weren't featured in the movies, except for here and there with Dobby and Creature, we didn't get it. But
True.
they even made a joke about it in the I already mentioned Puffs, so I'm going to reference it again.
Yeah.
They even referenced it and made a joke about it in Puffs, where the scene that's basically Deathly Hollows from the Puffs point of view. This house elf comes out of nowhere to help out the main characters of the play, and then when the Muggleborn main character comes back from being on the run during Deathly Hollows and encounters the house elf, he's like, "Who was that?" Like, house elf's been acting like, "Oh, we've been friends for 7 years," and the main characters are like, "Who is this?" I think that says something. But that's longer than I thought I could ramble about house elves. But do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, the house elves were always, in my opinion, a very um, unique idea from the books. Very interesting. So the fact that it basically gets skirted over after the second movie is just kind of a shame, in my opinion.
Well, and this just popped in my head as well. Like, Creature appeared in Order of the Phoenix in the movie, but he had a major point to play in the climax of the book, basically leading Harry and his friends to believe that Sirius had left Grimmauld Place, and that was left out of the movie, which I'd actually forgotten until just now. So Creature was responsible for the death of Sirius indirectly, but then he redeemed himself in Deathly Hollows. Oh, also they never mentioned that Harry inherited Creature. So
Yep, that's
so
true.
many things about all three major house elves that we could explore with at least a little bit, you know?
It would be worth it. It would be worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right, your first point, Quidditch.
Yeah, Quidditch. Well, the trick with Quidditch is some people hate it.
So I would love if whether he comes back or whether the copyright is worked out such so that some variation of Hedwig's theme from the Harry Potter movies was utilized for the Max series. Because I kind of utilized it with Fantastic Beasts and kind of put a Fantastic Beast spin on it. But I mean, that was still Warner Brothers with the same movie canon ish. So, but to have a brand new series, I know it's still Warner Brothers doing it because that's who has the rights, I believe. So like it's still Warner Brothers doing it, but it's also still a new series, so maybe they'd want a fresh start with new music. But I want Hedwig's theme to stick around. What do you think? You're musical.
Well, I think that would be awesome. And at the very least, you can keep it as a motif, right?
Yeah,
You don't necessarily have to have the whole thing preserved in order to keep some elements of the original
yeah,
music. Um,
exactly.
and I mean, with Warner Brothers, they'll have the copyright, so I don't think
Yeah.
that's going to be
That's
a
not a
challenge. But
that's not a
it
John
would be
Williams
great.
thing. That's Warner Brothers.
it'd be great if they have him consulting with the music at least.
I
Um,
mean, he didn't do the music for all the movies anyway, so it's not like they'd be pushing him to the side if they didn't use him because
Absolutely.
they haven't used him for I more than half the movies, I think. I don't know.
Well, and that's sort of the thing is you have to make sure that you carry it through well, right? Because I know a lot of people, for example, with Zelda, like we're sad that Koji Kondo didn't always do all the music, but
Mm.
you still had really talented musicians doing the work, right? Like there's some stuff from Wind Waker that wasn't by Kondo that I thought was actually really awesome. Um,
I mean,
so
I
the
kind of
thing
felt
is,
that
you
way
have
with
to,
the.
yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say I kind of felt that way with Narnia because the first couple movies, the ones that Disney did, were
Mm.
Harry Gregson Williams, and some of the and I think David Arnold did the music for the Dawn Treader um, when Fox did that, and he used some of the, like you said, motifs from the first couple movies, but the music in general was different. But I also kind of liked that because they weren't in Narnia anymore.
That's true.
So maybe that's
That's
a different
true.
story, you know?
I think the big key is that with music, you really just have to get really good talent who's really invested in it and they're not just phoning in, oh, let's make it orchestral and make this happen, right? It has to be people who really know how to write for orchestra, if they're doing orchestra, of course.
Yeah.
But it kind of just makes sense to do that. Um, Also makes sense to have choir because, for example, they had choirs in the books.
It
Um,
did.
well,
The whole
for
frog choir
example,
thing, I remember being just a movie thing.
well, then maybe I'm hallucinating that detail. Just the inner choir nerd in me inventing things to sound cooler.
Maybe. All right. Anything else about the music? Or do you want to talk about dragons?
Well, I could talk about music for a long time.
I know you could.
But at the same time, dragons are awesome. And Harry Potter has a lot of dragons, at least in the fourth book.
Yeah.
And, Ron's brother, my brain is doing horrible
Charlie.
for details today. Yes, Charlie,
You can
he's
at
the
least
dragon
include
king.
Charlie this time instead of writing him out.
Yeah, that would be another little side asterisk to the dragon category is let's actually,
Include all the Weasleys.
include all of the Weasleys rather than like mentioning them briefly in passing, right? Maybe
I think
not
he
just
was
in a
in the
postcard.
newspaper clipping in Prisoner of Azkaban, but
Yeah,
even that he's not mentioned by name in the clipping. That's just Ron shows Harry the clipping and it has the whole family.
exactly.
Wait,
Which
no,
of
because that's
course,
Bill that was in Egypt, so I might even be wrong about that.
well, but I always thought it was a shame that we only made the Hungarian Horntail in the fourth movie. Um, Whereas you have like the Chinese Fireball, the Norwegian Ridgeback, you know. And what was the other one? Wasn't it a Swedish one?
Okay, you keep talking. I'm gonna look them up.
Yeah. So I just think, you know, the other thing too is the Triwizard Tournament. Like we ended up
Okay,
only really seeing the
The
stuff.
Welsh Green, the Swedish
Uh,
shorts now, Chinese Fireball, and Hungarian Horntail.
where does the Ridgeback come into play then?
That was Norbert in the first book.
Uh,
A
my
Norwegian
goodness.
Ridgeback.
I'm hallucinating worse than ChatGPT today. Like, what is going on?
We need to
Anyway,
before this series comes out. I think we need to like book club the books and movies. I think that could be a fun
ugh,
podcast adventure. But
I'm
story
coming in with too
related.
much confidence about my book knowledge. Anyway, um,
Apparently so. But yeah, seeing all four of them, even if it's just in passing, instead of we see. we saw Harry with the Hungarian horntail, and in the book we only saw the horntail, but we could still see the others. At least like a montage of Cedric, Fleur, and Victor doing their task.
Exactly. I feel like honestly the tournament just you don't really see any of the contestants besides Harry doing their thing in the movie.
I would disagree with you only on the second task because we do see, and the third task because we see Fleur get knocked out of commission both times. Poor Fleur.
I mean, I guess that's fair, but
So, but yeah, to get a more rounded
I think that
experience,
would be a cool
the
thing
whole
to develop it
tournament.
more because sometimes it didn't always, I mean, it still felt like a tournament, but I mean, it just never seemed to have, I don't know. I
The
just feel like there was
competition
something
part is kind
missing.
of
They
hard
still
when
did a
you
great
see the one.
job, but
Yeah. Okay, moving on to our next point, Peeves. I know you had kind of mentioned Peeves before I told you to narrow it down to 3 points, but I would just love even that he exists because he's a he moves the plot along. Um, he's there throughout all the books, but they didn't even, and maybe it was just the CGI of the time, they didn't even like attempt to include him or mention him, which is a shame, in my
you know,
opinion. Um, but most especially, Order of the Phoenix, when Fred and George are leaving Hogwarts, they leave Peeves in charge of causing mayhem. And it's like the most, I can't call it wholesome because it's Peeves, but like in the most destructive way, it's like heartwarming. Just because everyone hates Umbridge, but
you
just how
know,
much you took that
you
to
gotta love
heart.
the chaotic characters.
I mean, I've never done D&D, which is a whole nother conversation, which we've had before. But the moral alignment chart is like Peeves is like chaotic neutral ish. Does that sound about right?
That sounds right to me.
So gotta have a little. It's like Muffin on Bluey.
That's true.
Oh, Muffin. Okay.
Oh,
What
poor
did you want to say
character.
about Peeves before we move on to your last point?
I don't know. I put Muffin as sort of chaotic good, to be honest.
I mean, especially after the extended episode when you can see her like buckling socks into her car seat. It's just, I love Muffin,
He's a good
especially
support.
since my 4-year-old is basically Muffin right now.
Sorry, we're all Bluey nerds, guys.
Me, you, Michael, even Joe. Joe doesn't even have kids, and he loves Bluey. So, yeah. Anything else you want to say about Peeves?
Mm, I think I'm good for now.
Okay. Your last point, the love triangle that I hate, but I'm
Well,
curious what you have to say
not
about
necessarily the love triangle, because I also want to capture like the the rest of the motley crew. But you know, when it comes to Severus and James and Lily, like I feel like those
it. You
kind
say
of
the crew, are you talking about the rest of
flashbacks,
the Marauders too?
yeah,
Yeah. So like
you
more
know,
flashbacks
Padfoot
or
and
like
Tonks.
extended stuff from Snape's memories or
And you know, the thing is, we have so much more stuff that we could flesh out even earlier if we wanted to. Like, honestly, you could almost make it like occasionally there are flashback episodes, right?
Mhm.
If we're talking about an episodic structure, but um, when it comes to all of that backstory, like it just sort of gets glossed over in the movies, right?
It really
I mean,
does.
we get to see some memories, right? But it's not. And in general, we don't play around with um oh, I'm really terrible today. You know that the memory bowl.
The pensive.
Yes, yes.
Just call it the memory
Um,
bowl. I think that's great.
I think that's what uh maybe that's what my childish memory remembers. But you invent things, but all of that just it felt really underdone, even though it was such an important part of the books. It was really, especially book six, it was just so integral to the whole story.
So is your point about James, Lily, and Severus less about them and more about the memories and stuff?
Well, it's kind of a combination, right?
This is true.
I want to see more memories. I want to see more flashbacks. I want to see those relationships and why that is important, really fleshed out because honestly, it explains so many things about
Mhm.
the characters' relationships and it explains
Instead of
uh
just a montage of
Severus
Steve's
so well.
memories like they did in the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
A little bit about the pensive in general. My wife and I have talked before, and she saw the movies before reading the books. So she still loves the movies more than most fans do, I think, just because that's what she started with. But there's so much of Voldemort's story that, I mean, it was a major part of the Half-Blood Prince, and it just gets rushed over in favor of teen relationship drama. Like we
Yeah,
spent more
yeah.
time on Ron and Lavender than we did on Voldemort.
And while we're talking about relationships and going back, like you could actually do more things like characters who are important in later books, bring them in, like even if it's just a cameo earlier in the seasons,
Luna,
right? Yeah, Luna existed before she showed up in the books. Cedric existed before he showed up in the books, right? So we can
or even
actually
just like
do something with that.
Show Cedric in Prisoner of Azkaban like he was supposed to be, instead of introducing him in Goblet of Fire.
Yeah, yeah.
I would pick that even.
All of a sudden, you're supposed to care about this guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to say about characters and the memories and the memorable?
Yeah, the pensive. Just give it its due. Don't just gloss over it, guys.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today to discuss some Harry Potter and our hopes for the. Uh, I still have a hard time saying Max instead of HBO Max. I don't know why, but um, trying to think of some Harry Potter like way to end this episode. But oh, here we go. Mischief.
Mischief managed.
I'm so glad you thought of it too. Thanks for listening to the Latter-day Saint Geeks podcast. Intro and outro music was provided by David Schradell. You can follow us on most social media platforms, including Facebook and Instagram. You can follow the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.